Hello, it's Andrew Eborn here again. Welcome back to another episode of Lives on Lockdown. And we're going to take you all the way back, only in our dreams, to Barbados and Terry Bent. Hello and welcome back. It's Andrew Eborn here for another episode of Lives on Lockdown. Last time you joined us, I went all the way to Barbados. Well, lucky you. We're going to go all the way back again. And I'm joined again by Terry. How are you doing, Terry?
I'm good, thank you, Andrew.
Good. Well, it's nice to see you again. Last time we spoke, we found out that in Barbados there have been 87 confirmed cases of coronavirus. And tragically, every death is tragic, 7 people died. Now, obviously, we've had
86, 86 actually.
Confirmed
We don't need an extra one.
No, well, exactly. But 86 confirmed cases. Tragically, 7 of those have died. We were talking about the restrictions that have been put in place. Basically, the whole of Barbados went into lockdown, other than essential workers who go backwards and forwards. And then there was a curfew system, depending certain hours of the day when people could do certain essential things, like doing shopping, but that was determined depending on the letter of the alphabet that you were, and that would determine the different times that you could go. Restaurants and hotels and the whole thing upon which Barbados is founded have all been shut. There's no such thing as furlough, but there's a sort of national insurance type support system, but most people are not necessarily contributing, so they haven't benefited from that. Is that a fair summary?
That's a fair summary, yes, Andrew.
And now we talked about people flying into Barbados have to stay in quarantine effectively for 2 weeks. Similar sort of thing when you're going to fly back to the UK, people are looking at that all the time. These rules and regulations are changing, so people should check before they travel. But what we're looking at is the devastating impact, nevertheless, it has had on the economy, because the economy is dependent, absolute dependent on tourism. And every day in my inbox, because I visited you at the beginning of the year, every day in my inbox I'm getting things from Sandy Lane, because I went there, and I went to various other places, all saying, here are the rooms, but you can't yet book them. What's going to happen? What's going to be the long-term effect? And how are people feeling generally in Barbados, bearing in mind that compared to the rest of the world, the number of cases is relatively small?
Well, in between when I spoke to you last, I was just looking at today's Sunday newspaper, and the headline on the front page is "Warning: Brace for economic pain brought on by pandemic, say the experts." And that is the headline there. And basically,
hold that up again, Terry. I'll get a close up of you. Hold it up and say something.
How's that? That's a warning. Brace for economic pain brought on by pandemic, say the experts. And the experts are telling us quite clearly that, you know, we have a problem. Because as much as we'd like to welcome tourists back to the island as soon as possible, and as much as we need the tourists back on the island as soon as possible, the big problem is that, you know, as soon as tourists start coming back, there is a chance that the disease will come back to the shores. We are in a position now where I have said now for a couple of weeks, if we can get through to the end of this month with next to no cases, which we are. Last week we only had a couple of new cases. This week we've only had 1 new case. So if we can get to the end of this month with no new cases, then we've pretty much eradicated what is on the island. But of course, the problem then is that the island needs to start to get back into a commercial situation, and that means tourists. Once you open the gates to tourists, you have the situation that they could be bringing the whole thing back, and we could be starting all over again. So it's a very delicate balance on where we go from here and how soon we can allow tourists back. Because we have 2 classes of tourists here. We have those that come in by aeroplane, and we have those that come in either to get on to cruise ships or come here for the day as part of a Caribbean cruise tour. And we all know that people describe cruise ships at the moment as floating Petri dishes. And you have the same issue when you're putting few hundred people on an aeroplane for an 8-hour flight from the UK or a 6 or 7 hour flight from America or Canada. That's 6 or 7 hours in a very confined space, and you only need one person on that flight or one person on that cruise ship. And, 6, 7 hours later, you don't know how many people may have contracted it. So it's a very difficult balance for the island to decide on when is going to be the right time to allow tourists to start coming back here.
Yeah, I mean, and as you say, there's a balance when people talk about lives. The two are interrelated. There's an economic impact and obviously a physical impact as well about people's health. And people's health and people's wealth are directly connected. Because if you've got an island which is dependent on tourism, and you don't have tourism, and you don't have economic security for everybody, it's a disaster waiting to happen, isn't it?
Well, that's it. I mean, people say that I've been sort of a purveyor of gloom in saying that I don't think we're going to have much of a tourist season this coming winter. And the Prime Minister openly admitted into her address to the nation on Thursday evening that it is going to be a very fine balance between letting people in and letting businesses reopen, and taking the risk, because you are risking people's lives. It's as simple as that. The problem is that the people that would be bringing it in are going to be the people that are the reason people have employment here, either in hotels or immediate family that live with these people who live and work in hotels, live and work in restaurants and bars, live and work in the tourist situations, tour operators, coach drivers. All of these people derive all of their family income from the tourism market. And it's the balance that you have to draw the line somewhere, where at some point you have to say the island can't survive without letting tourists in. How big is that risk in terms of lives?
Yeah, and it is, as you say, the difficulty is that sort of slight confusion, because at the moment, we were touching on last time, anybody who flies in has to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. That quarantine is paid for by your government. When they fly back again, the rules are changing all the time, but I assume by very, very recently, in not too distant future, there will be a similar sort of thing. When you fly back, you're going to have to do 2 weeks. And so in the UK, that'd be a similar sort of situation. People should check before they fly anywhere. The reality is, currently, it's not on anybody's radar that you're going to be flying. So you're right to book a holiday at the moment. However much we'd love to do that, it's not really possible, is it?
No, I mean, the strange thing is that a lot of the airlines, obviously the two main airlines flying into Barbados from the UK are Virgin and British Airways. And you can already now go onto their websites and find flights being advertised in late June and July to Barbados. But the question is, will those flights actually happen? Although Barbados hasn't closed its borders, so technically people could fly here, they may still have those restrictions whereby they have to go into isolation. Nobody knows at this stage, if people are buying a flight now, whether they will have to go into isolation then. Obviously, we all hope they won't, but we don't know. And the other thing is that, is it going to be viable for British Airways or Virgin to fly an aeroplane, which, if they go down what people are talking about as being socially distancing on aeroplanes having to happen, and if that is the case, it puts airlines down to, I believe, 60% of its capacity. So one would assume if they can only fly 60% of the people they would normally fly, the prices are going to go up to make
Well, they have to, don't they? I mean, you cannot afford to fly an airplane. I don't get it, because if you're going to do social distancing, well, we worked out last time, social distancing means me lying down, which is about 2 meters, roughly 2 meters. although it's different in certain territories that I'm showing to. I get that, like the Netherlands is 1.5, but it's work on the basis of 2 meters. When you're in a plane, you don't have 2 meters between you and the next passenger, even if you take out the middle seat. And you've got the trolley dollies going backwards and forwards, obviously distributing whatever they're distributing. That ain't going to happen on a plane, is it?
But I think the whole world, in terms of travel, is going to have to change in some respect. But as I say, what worries me is that it does increase the costs, which will mean it's more difficult for people to travel, and also by the same respect there, that you have the situation that people haven't worked for a long while, so they probably not earned enough money to be able to afford to travel.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. I was just looking online. I mean, there are lots of airlines obviously available, but Virgin are advertising holidays in Barbados starting at £738 per person. It describes, they're talking about finding holidays, I think some dates if you're there, but it's flexible, isn't it? I mean, check the website, 8 hours, 55 minutes. The temperature is incredibly high, 27 degrees. Time at the moment is 1:24 where I'm phoning you. Barbados is a small tropical island in the southeast Caribbean. Brits love Barbados, and more of us visit the island than from any other country. So it's Brits who are going to Barbados, or should be going to Barbados, and it's Brits who will need to know what is possible and when, isn't it?
Absolutely, and unfortunately, at the moment, Britain is the COVID capital of Europe in terms of its figures.
And you've got 86
and unfortunately, our other big market, which is the United States, has the worst record in the world.
Yeah, it's tragic. And as I say, so as much as you and I would love to say, let's all go off to Barbados and we'll meet again and have the fantastic time we had last time I saw you, the reality is it's not really until somebody finds a cure or finds a sensible way of working out how we're going to do this in practice. It's a bit difficult to say with certainty that it's going to happen certainly in the next few weeks, is it?
No, I don't think it's the next few weeks. And, as people have said to me, they may never find a cure for this, and we may have to learn to live with it like other diseases. But, we also have to take into account that the whole of the Caribbean, not just Barbados, the whole of the Caribbean, the whole of places like the Maldives, Philippines, all of these places are in the same boat as Barbados. Because you're a small island and you can lock yourself down, you can probably get rid of it on your small island.
Yeah, that's what would happen. 86 cases, 7 tragic deaths, but that's minuscule in compared to the rest of the world.
Absolutely, and a lot of small islands are in the same sort of position, that they have managed to sort the problem out with a small number of, as you say, very sad deaths. But most of them, you'll probably find, most of them have underlying causes as well. I think most of the 7 people that have sadly lost their lives here have had underlying health problems, things like diabetes, which is quite prevalent in Barbados anyway.
It is. There's a lot of sugar in as you say, it's the rum, the sugar cane, and that
exactly.
Sort of
everything in Barbados is sweet. For someone who, I've been in Barbados 16 years now, and I haven't taken sugar in tea or coffee since I was 16, so that's quite a while ago. And one of the first things I noticed when I first moved here is everything is sweet. Even bread is sweet. You eventually get used to it because it's all you can get. But, to me, coming here initially, having been here on holiday and then moving here, suddenly, everything is quite sweet, whereas it's not what you're used to. But you get used to it, unfortunately. There are things that since I've lived here, that I probably wouldn't have drank an awful lot of Coca-Cola back in the UK anyway. But here, I suddenly realised how much drinking rum and Coke. Rum is pure sugar. Coke is pretty much pure sugar, and I've got to cut down all this sugar I'm drinking. So I've stopped. I haven't drank Coke now with rum for a few years because I just realised how much sugar I was consuming. But you know, most people who come to Barbados and most of the locals here that drink rum will put Coke in it. Very, very sweet, and you know, you've got to look at trying to do things like that, and which is, as I say, what I did. And the interesting thing about coronavirus is that I've smoked for many years. I actually gave up about 18 months ago. In fact, I got the flu, and while I had the flu, I took the opportunity to stop smoking. I haven't had a cigarette for 18 months, and then suddenly one day I read in the British press that people who smoke had got a less chance of catching coronavirus. And I'm thinking, should I start smoking?
Yeah, I'm not. I think there's been so much, and this is the problem with this. There's been so much misinformation about this, and whether it's from people misreporting about detergents and whether that might be a possible solution to people saying about you should cough or you should sip lemon or garlic or all these sort of things. The greatest worry in this situation is that all the people who were constitutional experts during Brexit suddenly become virologists. Everybody professes to be an expert. And they don't know. They don't know.
Exactly.
They talked about a person who said this, and the theories and the fake news has just escalated during this, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And sort of, you know, every time you see a conspiracy theory on social media, it's accompanied by a YouTube video explaining why you should believe this. And as you say, you know, I mean, I've had this discussion with a lot of friends here, how everybody's suddenly an expert. You know, I've given my opinions to you, just they're my opinions. I'm not an expert, but common sense tells me if you've got a small island and you've managed to pretty much stamp out coronavirus here now, once you open the borders, you're letting it back in. Now, I don't think you need to be a virologist to work that one out.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the other thing, Terry, as well, and this is why on this programme, on Lives on Lockdown, what we do, I like to speak to people around the world and their approach to it. Because, and the people I think have been the most, for me, the most interesting, because they stick to the facts, are the scientists. So we had over here, for example, there's somebody called Professor Sarah Gilbert, who is working in Oxford on a possible cure, and we hear every so often about further and further developments. But she came on, was the Andrew Marr show over on the BBC here, and she just stuck to the facts. She said, dum, 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 this is it, okay, we're not quite sure, this is what happens, this is how viruses work, this is what about immunity and how that works. Once you've had it, we're not quite sure about this, but it doesn't, and there's a difference between the vaccine, which is going to test something different to whether you've had the disease, the virus, and whether that gives you an immunity. And she was so clear in everything that I understood, and I can do that. The trouble is, it's been politicized. And when you put politicians in front of people, they're in the business of getting re-elected. And I think the problem is a lot of people go down what I call the blame game. They try and say, well, it's their fault. It's their fault that so many people have died, as tragic as it is. Could they have done it differently? And I think the one thing we don't look at is trying to look around the world properly and say, okay, why has Sweden done it differently and what are the results there? Why are they getting success over here? And so on and so forth. What are the lessons of history? And so I've been talking to historians as well. I talked to an expert on looking at what happened, what was called Spanish flu in 1918. That was the other big, and there have been lots throughout history. How did that stop? What were the lessons? And in 1918, the biggest problem came when they let people out again after lockdown, because that was the second wave, as they called it, and more people got infected because they became a bit complacent or whatever it is. And I asked the historian, well, okay, how did it finish in the end? Because obviously they didn't find a cure. All that happened, it died out naturally. And that seems to happen. It goes all the way back to the Black Plague, to the bubonic plague, and so on and so forth. They all died out naturally. So this is the interesting thing, is what it's different this time, because we might find a vaccine. Then again, we may not. And so far, we haven't got one. And until we found one, nobody can say anything with certainty, can they?
Well, that's it. And, you know, I mean, I read stories, and I read on social media friends of mine who are saying they're not prepared to take a vaccine anyway.
Okay.
You know, and people have different ideas on vaccines. People have different ideas on how this is all going to play out. And the only way, as difficult as it sounds, it's gonna come down to suck it um, and see what happens. But as you say, things have been overcome in the end. But you know, we're of a similar age. You know,
Are you in your 30s as well?
when we were youngsters,
You missed
you
that.
didn't
Are
hear
you in your
about
30s
people.
as
You
well,
didn't.
Terry? Are you 30?
Well, yeah,
37.
exactly. But when we were youngsters, you didn't hear about people dying of all these different cancers. You know, things come along in periods of times. You know, I mean, it's like when HIV first came out. Nobody had really heard of HIV before. I'm sure it probably was around, but nobody had heard of it. And suddenly that was the big thing that everyone was dying of. Then they found various antibodies and things that could stop HIV, not necessarily stop AIDS, but you don't hear about that so much anymore. You know, and like when I was young, people died. They died of natural causes. They had a heart attack, a stroke. They died. Now, obviously, they've worked out that these natural causes were actually cancers and things like that. Things change, you know, in a few decades, maybe 50, 60 years time, people maybe not be talking about cancer. We don't know. You know, there'll be something else that's come along. And at the moment, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with something that probably has been around in some form, because obviously COVID-19 is just the latest strain of a coronavirus.
The 19 just relates to the year that it was discovered, but there's been lots of these coronaviruses around throughout history, and I think this is
Exactly. It's like people were saying, oh, look, Dettol or somebody knew this was coming because they've got on their bottle, it can be used as a cure or preventative for coronavirus. No, coronavirus has been around for many, many years. This is just another different strain of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the relevant thing. Again, two things happen: is that people are talking from ignorance, which is really, really dangerous, and fear, and nothing spreads and is more powerful than fear. So in the UK, as soon as we started hearing about these things, there were a lot of people who panic. And what they did when they panicked, they went and bought lots of toilet rolls. So you would go into shops and there was no toilet rolls, and though there were plenty of toilet rolls if you've got the distribution chain. People went in, they just stockpiled these things, stockpiled on dry foods and pasta, and they went crazy. Did that happen in Barbados?
Strangely, yes. Toilet rolls, now you can get toilet rolls quite easily. I still have no idea why everybody decided to stock up on toilet rolls. You know, the one thing that people were being told initially that you should take and you should only take was paracetamol. Paracetamol became very difficult to get. I think you went back just before my sister came out. My sister came out to stay with me for 5 weeks, just after you went back at the end of January.
End of January. I was with you in January and then left at the end. That's right.
Yeah, and my sister came out just after that, and just at the start of this worry about COVID-19. And obviously, one of the things that you couldn't get in the UK were toilet rolls and paracetamol. So we actually went out one day and we went into some of the chemists here, and she bought 100 paracetamol to take back with her because she knew she couldn't get them in the UK.
Right.
You know, but she didn't go out and buy thousands of the damn things. She just bought you know, little plastic container with 100 in that cost the equivalent of a couple of quid. They would, you know. But then suddenly, when it all kicked off and everyone was buying everything, Somebody trying to call me.
No, I wonder what it was. It suddenly made
Uh,
a little noise like a mouse, Terry. It was like
Sorry?
a little squeaking noise. Anyway, you're back with us. So, yeah, so she bought this paracetamol, 100 of them, that didn't stockpile, yeah.
Actually, the volume has suddenly gone right down on here. I can't hear you so
Oh,
well
I
now.
can hear you fine, so it's all good.
Okay. Yeah, it is just a bit. I've just checked my volume, and my in-call volume is saying it's on full, but I
Right.
probably can't hear you as best as I could.
Well,
But
you
yeah, as I
want to
was
do nice
saying,
and clear.
is
Anyway,
you
your sister had
suddenly you
100
went into
paracetamols. Yeah.
all the shops,
Yeah.
and there was no sign of paracetamol, none whatsoever.
Right.
In fairness, I haven't looked since because I haven't needed it, but. I'm guessing that there's probably still a shortage because that's one of those things that has to be imported. And the problem is when something like this happens, anything that's got to be imported isn't going to turn up here. In the same way that we had a situation where one of the ministers was saying that Rhianna had paid for some ventilators. But America weren't allowing them out the country because they didn't want other people having ventilators that they desperately needed themselves. And I think that situation got sorted out in the end between the embassy here and what happened, and they eventually did get out here. But that's the thing, when a situation like this happens, if you're a small island in the middle of the Atlantic that needs to import important things like ventilators, like paracetamol, and suddenly the people that you normally get them from need them themselves. So it's very difficult for you to get these things. It's like PPE. We've been having the RAF of flu stuff out here for us. We've had some of the major airlines have been using what they would have been using as planes for bringing tourists here, using that they've been using those to bring cargo out, to bring PPE and things that we need here.
Yeah, and it's extraordinary because that was the other thing I was going to say. And with only as I say, each one's tragic, but 86 cases is minuscule. The question is about PPE, whether that makes sense and that works on that sort of premise. Not only PPE, but also looking at things like ventilators. Because I presume we've only had so few cases, not many ventilators were actually required, were they?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Andrew. For some reason, I'm really struggling to hear you at the moment.
Well, don't worry. I'll
Since
tell you
somebody
what
tried to call me, the volume has gone quiet. Let me just try plugging in a headset.
Okay, we'll do that.
And see if that makes any difference, and if it will work.
No problem. Well, what I was saying, I say
you can still hear me, can you?
I can still hear you very, very clearly when you plug in
Right.
the headset. What I was doing,
I can hear you.
You can hear me now, can you?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so what I was saying, Terry, with 86 cases, confirmed cases of coronavirus in Barbados, you probably didn't need that many ventilators anyway, did you?
No, but obviously we had no idea at that point what we would need, so ventilators had to come in. I mean, I think Rhianna paid for 7, and we also had some paid for by some benefactor who obviously comes here and decided to send some.
And Rhianna has done wonders for the country, not just from a PR point of view, but also she was famously born near the cruise liner place. I think it's even called Rhianna Drive or something like that now, isn't it?
It is down off what was Spring Garden Highway. That's now the Mighty Griner Highway, which is right by the cruise ship terminal.
Yeah.
You can see the cruise ships from the end of the road that she was born in. And yes, it was renamed Rhianna Drive on the 50th anniversary. I think it was the 50th anniversary of independence. I think it was that year she came over for the 50th anniversary, and I think it used to be called Westbury Road, and it's now been called Rhianna Drive, which is where she was born. And obviously, most of the year, you walk up there or drive up there, and you'll see tour buses, people stopping to have a look. There's a star on the floor in front of the house. Somebody lives in the house. Not her family, and they probably get very annoyed with it sometimes. but they live in the house that Rhianna was born in. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it is extraordinary. And does she come and visit regularly?
She comes. Obviously, she tends to come out here for Carnival each year for Kadooment. That's not happening this year, so she won't be coming for that. And she tends to come over, obviously, for weddings and funerals of her family. Um, there's a difficult situation with her because obviously her mother and father have split up, and currently has a she actually currently has a court case ongoing in court in, I think it's in New York, I think it's in America, over copyright with her father because he was selling some stuff with her name on. And that's in a court case because I remember reading that because I think she's spending lockdown in the UK, so she couldn't attend the court case, so it's been put back a little while that's going on. So, you know, like most families where the mother and father split up, it's difficult. And she still I mean, she obviously still gets on with her father because he was actually one of those people that contracted it. And it turned out, I think in his case, he was a suspected case, but it turned out he hadn't got it. But the story goes, and you can only go by what you read in the newspaper, is that she actually bought a ventilator for him in case he needed it, and that actually arrived on the island for his use initially. Should he have actually needed it?
Oh, right. So he is still in Barbados.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And where does he live?
I don't know exactly where he lives. I assume he lives in the same sort of St. Michael area.
Right.
I quite often would bump into one of her brothers, her brother Rory, and I used to see him quite often around and about in the bars. I met Rhianna many years ago when she came into the radio station that I used to work for, and you know, she promotes Barbados. She is an ambassador to Barbados.
Well, she's a fantastic ambassador, and not only showing that you can come from a small island, it is a small island, and make it on the global stage, but also she hasn't forgotten her roots. I mean, she does look after, not just for ventilators, but she makes a significant contribution to the island, doesn't she?
Oh yes, I mean she has a foundation, a charity, and she does lots of things that people don't even get to hear of.
No, it's fantastic work. But also, I mean, Barbados, and in particular, is a magnet for the rich and famous, isn't it?
It is, or it was. We don't know what's going to happen now. I mean, before when we actually had a little break, I was talking to you about Sir Cliff Richard, and I think we missed that bit.
I didn't hear you talk about Sir Cliff, although a very good friend of mine was on the show yesterday, who's very good friends, a chap called Mike Reed, who's a DJ, an iconic DJ broadcaster over here, good friends with Cliff, who's obviously, I think he's in Barbados at the moment, isn't he, Sir Cliff?
He is. He decided he was going to remain here at his house here. And as I was saying to you earlier, but we lost the connection. But it was not last week, the week before, I think, he did a song with Gary Barlow. Gary Barlow's been doing songs with various people, and he did that from his house here. And he also did something, I think it was with Joss Stone. And he's done a lot of things from his house. Apparently, I've actually been to his house. I interviewed him when I was on the radio here. And I went up to his house, and apparently he was saying in his interview that he did the song with Gary Barlow from his bathroom because he thought the acoustics were far better there. When I was there, we sat in his lounge and recorded our interview. But now he's got a lovely property here. It is actually up for sale because with all the problem he had with the BBC a couple of years back, with a much publicised issue he had with them, he lost a little bit of, I don't know, what's the word I should use? He got a bit disappointed with the way things were going on. Obviously, he wanted to sell that house in the UK. He decided he was going to sell the house here in Barbados, but he has now said that if he does sell his house, he's going to buy a smaller one. He still wants to keep a base here in Barbados. And obviously he's got his farm and winery in Portugal. But again, I mean, Sir Cliff Richard is another great person who does a lot of things for charity here in Barbados.
Oh, no, he's an absolute icon. He is our British Elvis Presley, and it's that sort of age and things like that. And as you say, there are some genuine people in this business who do a lot with. They don't just sing it from the rooftops as the charitable work that they do, but they've been absolutely brilliant at looking after people along the way. And I think that it is so refreshing to find that. So, how much is the house on the market for?
Well, it's in the millions of US dollars. I'm not sure exactly. You know, and it is. I mean, it's a stunning house. It's not far from where you were staying, actually. Just the same side of the road you were on, just a little bit further down.
Well, I went to it. I went down. I know it is. So it's yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a stunning house. Beautiful gardens. He's got his own tennis court there, and
he loves his tennis.
He does, and that's why he bought it there, because originally the development he's on was one of the John Lloyd tennis estates that were built, and that's what he loved about it. But I mean, I've been out with him on occasions, and obviously when he had the late Cilla Black with him and people like that, and he's really good company. I mean, in all fairness, I probably had the same prejudice that, you know, he wasn't really my cup of tea. And I was only talking yesterday, the BBC had a thing about Eurovision on, and we were, me and a friend
last night. We had a sort of a trip down memory lane, nostalgia.
Well, that's right. And a friend of mine, me and a friend of mine was saying, because I was saying, you know, Save All Your Kisses for Me. Is that the best, really?
Brotherhood of Man. That's fantastic.
I know. But you know, that was coming up as like being our star song, and
no, we had Cliff did his thing. We also had Sandy, you know, a fantastic
Lulu
on the string. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I know, but the thing was that, you know, I mean, compared to some of the other countries, I mean, in fairness, that probably without the Eurovision Song Contest, no one in the world would have heard of ABBA. You know, I mean, what would the world be like without ABBA?
It'd be devoid of all sorts of things. So we've had an absolute joy. But tell me, I mean, interesting, because they say all the superstars, a lot of them, well, all of them, I mean, a lot of people, it is a magnet for superstars. Boris famously stayed on an island just before, during that sort of Christmas period when I was over as well. And you had Simon Cowell as a regular visitor down. And it is the great, the good, and the unwashed of the entertainment world, and politicians, they all flock to Barbados and the other islands for their holidays, for their little bit away from it all. That's all going to change.
Shall I tell you what one of the reasons is?
Yeah.
Barbados doesn't do celebrity. Barbados really, the thing is, you know, you can go down to supermarket in Whole Town, and quite often you'll be walking around and you'll bump into Sir Cliff, you'll bump into someone like Russ Abbott. You'll bump into these celebrities, and the only people that may go up to them and ask if they can take a selfie or ask for an autograph are British tourists. Bajans don't do celebrity, and I had this discussion with you over something a little while ago.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is Bajans don't care who you are. And I think I was saying to you that the only person that, you know, if he was sitting on a beach, that Bajans may go up to is someone like Michael Jordan,
right?
Because they like a lot of American sports. But even when you've had people like Cristiano Ronaldo and some of the top footballers in the world sitting there on the beach, Asians will just walk past them. Oh yeah, it's Cristiano Ronaldo, so what? You know, maybe someone like Michael Jordan they might go and try and get a photo with, but they're not fazed or interested by celebrity. You know, you go around the rest of the world and celebrity magazines are on sale here, there, and everywhere. If I imported a load of celebrity magazines in Barbados, the only people would buy them would be tourists. Right. Locals just don't get it. They don't get the whole celebrity thing. I mean, it's like since Love Island started a few years ago,
you read in the paper and everyone's commenting, oh, so-and-so who won Love Island's here. Someone from Love Island was here. Asians would look at you, what are you talking about? Who are these people? You know?
Well, obviously that's now been suspended, Love Island, and all sorts of things. And actually what's happened now, because society's changed. It's now the cult of celebrity. Andy Warhol was right about the 15 minutes of fame and everybody will get it. But now with this crisis, we've got some local heroes, what I call people who a few weeks ago, nobody had ever heard of. People like, at that stage, it was Captain Tom Moore. Did you hear the story of him in Barbados?
Absolutely, yes. I still watch, you see, I still watch UK TV here. I mean, obviously, we have Android boxes, and so I generally tend to watch ITV, BBC.
Right.
As a sort of journalist, the first thing I do every morning when I turn on the computer at 6 o'clock, 6:15, is go on the BBC homepage. I'll read some of the British newspapers, and obviously sport, because I do a lot of sport. I look at what's happening, and obviously at the moment, the big sport here in Barbados is cricket. So the big story we have here at the moment is, will or won't the West Indies go over and play England very shortly? That's the big story we're following.
What do you think? Do you think they're going to?
Here we go. Get yourself into trouble, Terry. Okay. My take on it is, West Indies Cricket Board are short of money at the moment, like every other sporting organisation. But the West Indies Cricket Board are always short of money, and they're particularly short of money now. They have players' contracts to pay. They need income. Normally, the touring side don't get any money. The home side get all of the money. I believe, from talking to journalists in the UK and people in the UK, that the West Indies and Pakistan are both being courted by the ECB to tour England as soon as possible, with the incentive that the ECB are going to pay them some money to do it, because obviously the ECB want cricket. They want to try and get cricket back on as soon as possible. And I think they're going to help out the West Indies and Pakistan if they're prepared to go there. So I'm sure the board are very keen on it, because they need the money. Whether the players are is another matter. The West Indies board picked a squad of about 30 players this week just gone to tour England if they decide they're going to do it. And obviously they've said they won't pick a weakened side. But at the moment, there hasn't been any meetings that I know of between the West Indies Players Union, although most of the senior players aren't members of that union anymore. They all have their own international agents, because most of the top players play in international T20 competitions around the world. So they're not actually members of the Players Union anymore. They're represented by the independent agents. And I think it'll come down to whether they can get enough of the senior players to agree to tour, because I don't think the ECB want them to send a weakened side, which is why they've named a squad of 30 at the moment they're looking at, and there are some names in there that even I haven't heard of.
Right.
So, this is the problem, is that they've got to decide what is safe. And in fairness, Johnny Grave, who's the CEO of the West Indies Cricket Board, has said it's going to come down to what players think and what players agree is going to be a safety thing. It's the same issue that they had a few years ago after the bombings and attacks in Pakistan, whether they toured Pakistan or whether they played them somewhere like Abu Dhabi or Dubai rather than in Pakistan, because they didn't deem it safe to play there. It all come down to what will be safe. I mean, they're talking about putting the players in a couple of weeks quarantine and then sticking them in a hotel, which they think will probably be in Birmingham, and then they will be able to use the facilities at Edgbaston and just drive directly to Edgbaston, use the facilities straight back to the hotel, And the games, I think they're looking at maybe Old Trafford and Southampton as being a couple of the grounds that they may use, which they would just get coached down there for the games. And they're picking on grounds that have got multiple dressing rooms so they can do more social distancing. I mean, Ashley Giles, the chairman of the ECB, as the English Cricket Board, has said that at the moment they're looking at getting their bowlers training with their own box of balls, which nobody else uses. But obviously the fault with that is it's okay practicing with your own box of balls, and it's also possible that you only bowl with your own box of balls. But once the batsman hits it, a fielder then comes into play, and they're going to handle those balls.
Yeah.
So I don't know what will happen. I mean, I really.
The other thing, Terry, and I was discussing this with a number of sports people. I mean, firstly, there's the thing about playing behind closed doors, so you don't really get a crowd, so you miss out on that sort of atmosphere. And we've had that with football as well. But also, and I was discussing this with Monty Panesar on an earlier episode of this program. What happens if one of the members of your team starts to get symptoms? Because the idea then is that anybody you've been in contact with for an extended period of time also has to take time off and put themselves into quarantine. That's the whole team wiped out, whether you've got 30 people or just a handful, isn't it? So
Well,
the
exactly.
difficulty is you've got that uncertainty. We're all desperate. As a nation, we love our sport. Around the world, people love their sport in the same way as they love music and they want to go to concerts and so on and so forth. Thinking through the practicalities, it's very, very tricky.
Oh, it is. I mean, you know, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I love the Caribbean Premier League. You know, I mean, our local team, the Barbados Tridents, won the league last year, and obviously we would very much love to see them this year repeat that and keep hold of the trophy. The problem is, obviously, with the Caribbean Premier League, it's not just West Indian players; it's players from all around the world. So the CPL, the organisers, are having to decide now, number one, can they hold it? Because it's held across 6 different islands. There's Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, St. Kitts, St. Lucia and Guyana. So that normally the games are held in each of those countries. Can they do that? And they're saying that if they can't do that, then they may hold the entire competition here in Barbados, bring all of the teams to Barbados and play all the games at Kensington Oval, possibly behind closed doors. But they'll be able to sell the TV rights, and obviously that's where the money comes from.
Yeah, of course.
Most sports now, you know, so the TV rights would be what paid for it. But would that mean that the international players won't come, or you know, will they want to come? Number one, will they be allowed to come? Number two, will Barbados let them in? Number three, you know, so there's so much to be sorted out. Do I think? Well, the other option they have is play it with just Caribbean players, which then means it's not the competition that we know and love. But it is a way of doing it. In fact, St. Vincent are starting their own little competition either next week or the week after, with I think 6 or 8 teams in it, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But that's obviously with just local players, people who live in St. Vincent. So I mean, that is something that everyone's keeping their eye on to see how that works. Do I personally think CPL will happen this year with international players? No. Do I think it's really worthwhile doing without the international players? I don't think they'll get the TV audiences because, you know, I mean, obviously everyone wants to see some sport on TV, but the CPL without the international players, I don't know. I mean, last year we had a couple of English players. We had Alex Hales playing for us. We had Harry Gurney playing for us. Overseas players, we had Shakib Al Hassan from Bangladesh. We had JP Dumney from South Africa. You know, and that is the thing. People come to see the international players. You know, in the past we've had AB de Villiers play for us. We've had Kane Williamson, the New Zealand skipper, play for us. We've had Owen Morgan, the England captain, play for us. And as much as we want to see the local players playing, it's those big names that draw people in through the gates.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's true of so many things. You need the heroes, don't you? You need the big stars. But I think you're right. It's better to have some live sport than none. Because at the moment, people just showing the repeats. It's the same with football, although that's starting to open up. We've had some games, obviously, internationally, and they're starting to try that with social distancing. And you see the subs so many bits apart, but you're still not going to get the big crowds or the atmospheres. I was quite interested to see on the news they had cardboard cutouts of some of the fans now, so you can attend virtually, which I thought was quite good. But it will come back. We do want things. As you say, in Barbados, they're going to start easing the restrictions now. What's going to happen over the next couple of weeks? Have you been told?
Well, yeah, as I said earlier, from tomorrow, a lot more shops are going to be allowed to open.
What sort of shops? Because you've had essential shops beforehand, and we've now had garden centres famously opening up.
Yeah, well, we introduced halfway through, we introduced the opening of places like hardware shops because obviously people needed to do emergency repairs and things like that. The other thing you've got to remember is at the end of this month, we come into what is technically the hurricane season here. So we have that to worry about on top of coronavirus, you know. We have the hurricane season about to come, the start of our rainy season. I mean, today is a nice sunny day. It's a little bit overcast, but it is breezy. You know, there are people who haven't been able to get out to boats to do repairs on boats, and we all know that very, very soon people are going to have to start moving boats because of the hurricane season. You know, so many things have coming. So, like from next week, barbers shops. Not that I need that. Barbers shops and hairdressers are reopening.
It's lockdown and locks down, I think, for a lot of people, isn't it? That's what they say.
Well, that's it. You know, I mean, when I moved here 16 years ago, I had quite a healthy head of hair, but I just started shaving it after the first 6 months anyway, because it's too hot to have hair here.
Yeah.
The one thing I didn't, you know, you didn't give me much. You didn't give me much notice that we were going to do this. I haven't had a shave for a week.
Oh, it's very manly. I think nowadays people are forgiving all sorts of things. I think you have the lockdown look. That's okay. The lockdown look.
I have got out of the habit of shaving because you know,
I think a lot of people have. They all get these bushy beards and this long hair and all that sort of stuff, and wear the same clothes for generations, weeks after weeks. So I think the sale of antiperspirant has gone down.
well, funnily enough, as I told you earlier, I was getting Monday morning and Friday afternoon as my shopping days. And Friday afternoon, I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to go out shopping. You know, people will see me. And because I've done cricket on the radio here, I've had a radio show. Lots of people know me on the island. I'm quite reasonably well known. I thought, you know, I ought to make an effort here. I will have a shave. I will have a shower. And I'll go out to do my shopping feeling fragrant, and got into the shower and the water was off. Well, you know, I don't believe this. So hence I still haven't had a shave, and I had to use an awful lot of deodorant because I'd actually said to somebody on Facebook, if I don't do this, I said, someone's going to, I'll smell like a dead badger at the moment. You know, I just had to plaster myself with deodorant before I went out shopping because, you know, even social distancing, I think the smell would have been, you know, more than enough.
I think it makes it compulsory then, doesn't it? You can get
exactly, yeah.
Stay away from the smell. Yes. That's right. You mentioned, I mean, you started life in Birmingham. And so you can tell, you never lose the accent. So fantastic. What made you go to Barbados?
Well, I actually left Birmingham in '96 and moved down to Devon. I moved down there to work for Plymouth Argyle Football Club. And so the last, so the sort of 8 years before I moved here.
Did you do physiotherapy in the football clubs?
Yeah, I did. I was the reserve and youth team physio for Argyle, and I did some coaching because I'm a qualified coach, qualified physio. And I actually had just passed my players agent exam, and the decision was to stay in the UK and try and make a load of money as a players agent, who's probably the most hated person in football, or move to Barbados. And at the time, I decided, I'd been coming to Barbados with a girlfriend for quite a while. We loved it here. And we'd actually talked about it. And then she got made redundant. She actually worked for Virgin Management. And they had a restructuring. And the good thing was that we used to get to come here quite a lot because she got staff rates on flights and things, So coming here was quite
after their crew, yeah.
Was quite cheap, yeah. So anyway, we decided we'd look for a business here, and we were trying to decide what to do. And like most expats that move here, we decided to open a bar and restaurant. And so we were offered one, and we decided, yeah, okay, let's do it. So we moved here in 2004. Opened a bar and restaurant, and of course we had Cricket World Cup here in 2007. And suddenly, after the season of the winter of 2004 and up till sort of this time in 2005, when the tourist numbers go down because it's the start of hurricane season, and that's the time when a lot of the hotels will maybe close for a month, let their staff have time off and things like that. But it was like the run up to getting ready for the Cricket World Cup of 2007. And all hotels in the area decided they were going to close for refurbishment for a year. And Hull Town, as you know, is like a really busy area, and Hull Town became a bit like a ghost town while all of the hotels were doing refurbishment to get ready for the Cricket World Cup 2007, which unfortunately turned into a total disaster, really, for the Caribbean, because the big nations who were selling lots of tickets, which were India and Pakistan, and to get Indian and Pakistani tourists to come to the Caribbean was unheard of. Yet they were buying up all the hotel rooms, they were buying up all the tickets. It was their one big opportunity to come, because normally if India or Pakistan are playing here, the only people who are supporting them are Indians or Pakistanis who live here. They were all coming over for Cricket World Cup. They got knocked out in the first round, and then tourists all went back. And the promise of all the businesses and the business owners becoming millionaires overnight went out the window. And it didn't quite work out the way a lot of people had thought. But for us, a bar and restaurant, a bit like now with coronavirus, you've got a bar and restaurant, you can't open, or there's no point opening because it's costing you more to open than you're taking, because there are not so many tourists about. We just lost so much money in 18 months that we decided to close it. We had to make the decision to close it. Fortunately, then I got a job with one of the local radio stations, and in the end, my partner at the time decided that she'd had enough of Barbados. She was from London, and she liked to go shopping, and shopping in Barbados is not really what she was used to. And so that was that. And I stayed on. She went back to the UK many years ago now, and I'm still here doing little bits here and there, cricket mainly, and surviving on what I've got. And that's even more to the point now that it's the problem is that you can't even do the things that you normally do. That's the thing. You get into a routine where you go out and do things, do quiz nights, things like that. All the things that you would normally do, you can't do, and you don't know when you're going to be able to do them again. Bars and restaurants are actually opening from tomorrow, but only for takeaways and deliveries, because they obviously social distancing becomes a problem, and it becomes a problem for staff. They're hoping that sometime in the very near future, we'll be able to get restaurants back up and running, bars back up and running. Because apart from anything else, tourists aren't going to come here if there's no bars and restaurants, especially the Brits.
That's absolutely right. I mean, and as you say, you must keep us informed, Terry. We will get you back on the show. But for now, it's been a real delight seeing you. Be safe. And as I say, be alert. This is the message. Stay alert, Terry. And we'll get you back.
Wasn't it from the Second World War when someone came out with the same posters, but what's alert?
No, absolutely, absolutely.
You know, I mean,
Britain needs more alerts. That's what they say.
Exactly. Yeah. I think at the moment I'm carrying on with what I've done for the last 8-9 weeks, and that's staying in unless I really have to go out. When I go out, social distancing. You have to wear a mask in the shops, and that's all you can do. So the same to you, Andrew, and anyone of your visitors, your listeners and viewers out there. Just stay as safe as you possibly can. That's the only thing you can ask people to do, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sound words. We will get you back. Keep us all informed. But for now, Terry, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for your time.
Take care.
Bye. Waitrose. That is Waitrose pineapple, orange, and something else squash.
I believe you. It looks amazing.
Yeah, not
Terry,
rum.
thanks a lot. Take care. Good to see you.
All right, mate. Bye.
There you go. So that was Terry all the way in Barbados, and longing for the time that we can travel. We will bring him back. We'll keep updated on the situations in every territory around the world. If you would like to share your experience, want to talk about your life on lockdown, get in touch with us here at LOL, that's lol, at octopustv.com. But in the meantime, be safe, take care, and stay alert. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.